Hello, and welcome to the Minority Arts Appreciation Society, where we're ticking all the boxes. I'm Matty, and I lead the film discussions,
I'm Josh, and I lead the music discussions.
and today is a very special episode because, ladies and gentlemen, today is the death of audio issues on this podcast. Now, I can assure you that when I go and edit this episode, there will be no hours strenuously focusing on periods of 10 to 12 seconds, wishing that the audio would just work. Those days are long gone, and I'm very grateful for it. No, I'm kidding. I'm 100% sure that when it comes to editing, I'll realize that my voice randomly sounds like I'm 7 years old at points, and random segments will have just disappeared completely. But hey, such is life. Anyway, rant over. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm good, thank you. Enjoying the London sun. Uh,
Yeah, you're back in town.
yeah, back in the south, talking about Japanese monster movies. I mean, I'm really living it up.
Yeah, I know. What more could you want? And really, I know you. I know you well, living in London together. And what I know about Josh is that he loves strong, character-driven movies where you really care and empathize with the characters and what they're going through, no matter what. So naturally, movies about giant monsters smashing against each other or buildings really suited to that. So I'm just glad I know you so well that I can really cater to your needs.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel out of my element here. Um, I've never seen a real Godzilla movie. I've only seen like the shitty American ones.
Yeah,
And
they
yeah, the
suck.
Shin Godzilla that I watched for this podcast. Yeah, this definitely isn't my area of expertise. I like uh
Are you a fan of monster movies in general at all?
honestly like
Specifically Godzilla?
it's not technically a monster movie, but my favorite monster movie vibe is probably Iron Giant. I know Iron
Hmm.
Giant is a robot, but I think like story-wise he kind of in like a Spielbergy way works as a monster kind of giant thing destroying things. Uh But obviously, that's a lot more like introspective than kind of one where the monster's the villain. I
Yeah.
enjoyed Pacific Rim, I guess,
Oh, Pacific Rim rocks, man.
but I can't really. I like Power Rangers. Does that count?
The
The
movie?
I like the Power Rangers show and the 1990 movie where they
Oh,
snowboard, and I also like the remake movie. I'm pretty into most things Power Rangers, if I'm
what,
honest
the
with you.
2017 movie?
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
And that's it for the Minority Arts Appreciation Society. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. No, of course I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding. Um, I love you. I'm sorry.
I hate to get off topic, but it's basically just a John Hughes movie, and then at the end they fight a giant monster. Like it was just it's a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it, uh, it could have been a lot better, but it could have been a lot worse.
Okay.
I thought I thought the actors were pretty likable. I think the worst part about it was probably the action, honestly.
Mm.
So it's probably not a good answer to do you like
Monster
monster
movie.
movies?
Right,
The
yeah.
answer is really I'm not actively opposed against them, but generally I do find like big disaster type movies a bit dull,
Yeah.
not much to latch onto. So yeah.
No, I completely understand. I really do. So, to bring this back to our Godzilla discussion, I would just like to talk about why I chose these two movies for this episode. I am a huge monster movie fan, and I'm quite a big Godzilla fan. I wouldn't say I'm not like a die-hard, seen every movie, origins and all, but I just think he's a really interesting narrative tool, essentially. And so when I heard that Michael Dougherty, who directed Krampus and Trick or Treat, which are both really fun, essentially holiday-based monster movies, when I heard that he was directing it, I had a little bit of hope, because, as is hinted in Godzilla King of the Monsters, they're essentially building up a cinematic universe of these monsters, and while I didn't enjoy Godzilla 2014, I do feel like there was a good movie in there somewhere. I know you can essentially say that about every movie, but I like the way they approached uh, the telling of the telling a story of a world where Godzilla exists, which sounds ridiculous, but film's a spectacle, and it was an enjoyable spectacle, especially towards the end. Um, and also the Kong Skull Island movie that came out a couple years ago or so was fun, and I enjoyed it. These aren't great movies, but they have something to them, especially as a monster movie fan. So, like I said, when Michael Dougherty, a fun, talented director, was given the helm of this, I was excited, and the trailers started coming out. There was some genuinely striking imagery in them. There were these wonderful shots, only of the monsters, only of the monsters, but they were unique and they had vision. And so I thought that, in this cinematic universe, they were continuing down the road of letting directors have their vision. Kong Skull Island is a film that has vision, and while I don't like its vision, Godzilla 2014 is a movie with vision. Um, but to come to my opinion on this film, I'm just gonna go right into it. This film is not good. Um, to a laughable extent at points for me. I was embarrassed at points watching this movie. I like just cringing at the dialogue. The dialogue is the worst part. The dialogue had me oofing every every scene. I don't think there was a scene where human characters interacted where didn't wince essentially. But to get a bit more focused, I was really disappointed. Actually, don't like the way these films treat Godzilla, and I want to get into that later. But overall, I was just so disappointed. I have a lot to unpack with this movie, even though it's a really stupid blockbuster, with just a lot of Godzilla history behind it, and that's the only thing we're talking about basically. But yeah, sorry, rant over. Josh, what did you think of Godzilla King of the Monsters? And by the way, this is a spoiler discussion, so bear that in mind.
So yeah, as I previously stated, yeah, I don't really, I'm not familiar with this franchise very much. I've seen the American installments. I haven't seen any of the old Japanese movies. I do kind of get the vibe from that the initial Godzilla. Tell me if I'm wrong, but the initial Japanese Godzilla film is kind of like it's kind of like Jaws, but it's like a nuclear waste monster, and it's like a horror movie, kind of, right? It's a horror disaster movie. And then as the franchise went on, it kind of became more about getting creative with
Action.
different monsters and like yeah, creative action sequences and kind of like almost like WWE, right? Like
That's a great way to put it. That's honestly a great way to put it. It was just fun. You're right. The original is a very in its inception, Godzilla is kind of horrifying as a concept, and it's got wackier as it went on. There's like an iconic image of Godzilla like sliding along his tail to kick Ghidorah, the Hydra-esque monster, and it's all like stop motion animated, and it's amazing. It's so goofy, but it's distinct enough that it doesn't detract from the original. But yeah, carry on.
So that's what I think is really interesting today, because obviously, after we review King of Monsters, we're going to move on to review Shin Godzilla, and here we have two sort of reboots or remakes of classic Godzilla Japanese, and one of them, Shin Godzilla, is kind of going for that horror original Godzilla film vibe, while King of Monsters is definitely going for the more maybe schlocky B movie WWE-esque vibe of the later series. So I think there was real great potential for King of Monsters to tap into something really authentic, fun side of Godzilla. Uh, Leading up to it, I wasn't looking forward to it, and I kind of was dragged into the cinema kicking and screaming. And I gotta say that the film lived up to my expectations. It was just as boring as I thought it was gonna be. And I honestly find very little in this film to like. Uh, Among the loud noises, I was so bored, and I tried to kind of find anything in the film to latch onto of interest. So I was like, okay, what are they doing thematically? What's happening? And there's an interesting scene when the Japanese doctor, the Japanese scientist, explains to the white male protagonist. I don't remember his name. What was his name?
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Michael Dougherty knows what the main character's name was.
So yeah, that guy. So yeah, that guy. The Japanese scientist is explaining. So the main white protagonist, his backstory is he's lost his son who died in the last Godzilla attack, and he's estranged from his kids and his wife.
And he hates Godzilla. He
Yeah,
hates
he hates
Godzilla.
Godzilla for this, right? So there's a great scene when the Japanese, well, I say great scene. It's not really a great scene. It's a scene where the Japanese, edit me out saying great scene. I don't want to be anyway.
We take that back.
The judge, yeah, the Japanese scientist is kind of trying to calm down the main character, and he's obviously the Japanese scientist is a proponent of Godzilla. He thinks we should not kill it. So he's explaining, that sometimes he says something about like demons from our past kind of come back, and we have to decide how we're gonna deal with them or reconcile with them. So yeah, and I was thinking, oh, okay, so maybe there's a parallel with monsters of old rising from the earth with kind of the father dealing with trauma of old, and kind of there is a suggestion that it's our fault that creatures like Godzilla exist. Like they're or not that they exist, but that they're angry. They're a product of us misusing the earth. So I thought there was maybe an interesting parallel between like a kind of a climate change message as well as a kind of dealing with trauma and regret message of kind of Godzilla is symbolic of the demons of our personal and environmental lives coming back to haunt us. It's
Mm.
punishing us um, for mistreating the earth, but how we react to Godzilla is similar to how we may react to previous mistakes we've made or regrets we have. Will we react violently or will we come to terms with them? Will we reconcile with the planet Earth and with our own inner demons? So I was like, maybe there's like a kernel of something there. But as the film went on, I mean, it pretty much just doesn't live up to, I think, this promise to kind of deliver in the very cohesive thematic message. You kind of it goes to a really stupid place where instead of genuinely dealing with how do we reconcile with the failures of humanity, both personal and on a global scale. It goes to no, we just need to kill the big alien monster thing. See, the alien monster thing is bad because it's not from Earth, and this is an easy solution. And yeah, this is what I mean by this film. There's nothing in it to grip onto. If you're not into the action, and like me, and you try to find some like character-driven, thematic stuff to be interested in, even that stuff is very flimsy and inconsistent. And that was the thing I found the most frustrating about this film.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you've said. I just want to essentially lay out the premise of the film. So, yes, it is a few years on from the end of Godzilla 2014, and Godzilla has been nowhere to be seen. But then they also suggest that Monarch has been tracking him for a few years. It's very confusing, very poorly presented, like a lot of things in this film. So yes, no one knows where Godzilla is, and no one knows what to do with these titans that are around the world that we're aware of, but are dormant at the moment. And so essentially, you have Monarch, a like pro Titan organization that believes we should protect Godzilla, that there are allies. While there might be Titans that want to cause us harm, there are Titans like Godzilla who are benevolent. The main conflict of the movie is between this group, Monarch, and I guess what you would call an eco-terrorist. I believe that's what they call it in the film. An eco-terrorist group led by Charles Dance in his most underused and embarrassing performance of his career. Um, like essentially this eco-terrorist group are trying to free all of the titans because they believe that humanity has gone too far and that we must be put in check by these titans against our will or not. And just to talk about that, the film presents this as a legitimate point of view. I massively, massively, massively disagree with this. I think punishing innocent billions of human lives is ridiculous and scapegoating, and I hate it. I hate it so much. And so when the film presented this as a legitimate point of view to be debated, it was awful. Sorry, to get back on track. So essentially, the main conceit of the film is this, yeah, thematic disagreement between should we allow humans forgiveness and redemption, and use Godzilla to essentially protect ourselves, and as a result will change, or should we just be essentially put in check against our will and by the multi-headed monster Ghidorah. But like Josh said, it devolves into um, stupid monster movie action. And I enjoy these films for action. Like I'm not gonna lie and pretend that I view Godzilla as this really intelligent, you know, commentary on humanity. I also really like it when Godzilla punches things and does shit like that. It's fucking fun as hell. It's basically a giant dinosaur. And I would like to say that there were action scenes I enjoyed in this film. I think the first fight between Godzilla and Ghidorah is enjoyable. Um, Godzilla, is this when? No, it's not when he rips its head off. Um, but yeah, I did quite enjoy that. The action in this film, I had fun with. This film didn't make me angry. It made me a bit exhausted and like it was like a fever dream. I kept laughing at things that weren't actually that funny. Um, not the film's attempts at comedy because frankly it's awful. It's an attempt at marvelous comedy writing, um, but so atrociously bad, like so awfully bad. I talked about this with Josh. There's a moment where and one of the Japanese characters uh, says the name of one of the monsters because only exposition can be delivered by Japanese characters in this film because only I just oh wow I hated it. But yeah, so they name the multi-headed monster Ghidorah, and generic white male says to other generic white male, "Hey, sounds like gonorrhea," and I winced, and I think at this moment in the cinema, people laughed, but it was more like they were laughing at the attempt of the joke. Like there was a moment where the joke like didn't play and no one laughed in the cinema, but then people kind of like laughed at how long they gave the joke to play. Like people couldn't believe that they actually like thought that was worthwhile. Anyway, sorry, this is so sporadic. But that's the main conceit of the movie, and it doesn't execute it well. It devolves essentially. There are no characters. There are no characters. No one has any personality beyond their motivation in this movie. I cannot tell you what kind of person the main character is because he's a void. He's a blank slate for you to project yourself onto. And that's not interesting. That's not interesting. I don't go to movies to see myself and other people. I go to movies to be told a story with interesting characters, and this film doesn't do that on any level.
To talk about the action itself, I think honestly I found the action to be really lacking. To go
Okay.
back to my WWE reference, I think to make a fun, big, dumb action movie, you need kind of charisma, and I don't think this film has any charisma. To think about like Pacific Rim, every robot has their little quirk, and the monsters have little quirks, and it's pretty interesting and fun to see how they match up against each other. And here, I think the complete and utter failure to give the monsters any semblance of like personality, uh, is kind of embarrassing. There are
Yeah.
moments where it almost does it quite well. I do like the way the three heads interact with each other on the what's the name of the monster?
Ghidorah. People made
Good.
a really big deal about how much personality it had, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ghidorah, I did like how it kind of attempted with the three heads interacting with each other that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But Godzilla himself is just a really nothing character. And I think in a film like this, where you're setting up like a what's it going to be like when this monster fights that monster? I
Yeah.
think personally, I'd argue that you want the monsters to feel distinct and have personalities. Um, Probably one of my favorite monster films is Peter Jackson's King Kong. And what Peter Jackson's King Kong gets so right is that he gives King Kong a personality while still making him feel like a gorilla. There's a really great part when King Kong's captured Naomi Watts' character, and he's kind of got her in his little gorilla nest, and he's flicking her around and like laughing as she tumbles over, and kind of amusing himself in a bully-ish way. And then she picks up a couple sticks and starts juggling and does like a backflip, and he's creasing, like he's really enjoying it. And you see these characters bonding, and it's this great moment of giving the monster actual personality and making it fun when the monster goes and fights the T-Rex because you feel like
Mm.
you connect to this character. Godzilla is just a dumb reptile who looks angry all the time in this. Uh there's no personable fun. And personally, yeah, I would like it to be a bit more cartoony in the sense of giving him some personality, making him fun to watch. It's really hard to invest in the action in this film. I like the use of color in the action scenes, as opposed to kind of films like Transformers by Michael Bay, where a big problem in the action scenes is you can't tell the robots apart, making it hard to know who to root for. This film has a great use of color, where generally blue means good guy, and then like what was it, orange is bad, right?
I
Uh,
really like the way those colors look. They do
yeah,
look great. That was the best stuff in the trailer and the
but
movie.
again, another big problem I have with these goddamn movies is you have these amazing uh amazing's too good of a word, but you have these like potentially good giant monsters battling each other, and you set it at rainy nighttime where you can't see shit. Why?
Yeah.
I just want to enjoy the action. Pacific Rim does this as well, and it's so infuriating.
The third act is
Yeah.
incomprehensible in this. It's so loud and you can't see what's going on and it's so stupid. And it's oh god.
For those reasons, I find the action really dissatisfying.
Yeah, I completely understand. Yeah, one last thing I want to talk about in these movies because we are talking about the West's interpretation of Godzilla versus the East's. With Godzilla's personality in this and how they treat him, he's treated as this holy figure in this movie, and it's so fucking cloying and like I can't think of the word. They get Godzilla wrong. They get Godzilla wrong. I get it in the hokey action movie Japanese ones. He's like kind of goofy and things like that, but he's treated like a biblical figure in this movie. There's a literal scene where the Japanese like it's obviously a tribute to Eastern Godzilla movies. The Japanese Professor Man sacrifices himself with a nuke to save Godzilla is the stupidest sentence I've ever said. And it's treated so sincerely, and it's so stupid. It's so stupid. There were people literally laughing in my cinema in this scene. They might have been drunk, but who cares? Um, yeah, it's so stupid. Godzilla is treated as with like such reverence. And not only has the film given no real justification for this, he's just really like a convenient thing that they can use to fight Ghidorah. He's not benevolent. He's just convenient. They're just exploiting their like alpha competition thing. So when they treat him like that he's protecting Earth, it's in in the film's own logic, it's wrong. It's wrong. And also that's not what Godzilla was in the East. Like you said yourself, Godzilla is a horror figure. He's meant to be terrifying, and he's not terrifying in this. Not that they're trying to make him terrifying, but he should be. Or you can go the complete opposite end and you can make it cartoony and fun, and I would love that. I would love that so much. I would just love a cartoony, fun action movie with Godzilla. I would much prefer that over a bland, melodramatic, characterless, and ultimately pointless American blockbuster using one of my favorite cinematic characters. So yeah, that's how I feel about how they handle Godzilla.
Well, I slightly disagree with you. I think you can make an interesting religious parallel with kind of larger than life monsters like this.
I'm totally not saying you can't. I'm just saying like I don't think Hollywood is the place to do that. Basically,
Interestingly, um, to foreshadow our Shin Godzilla review, Hideki Anno, the director of Shin Godzilla, is also the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And as the title Neon Genesis Evangelion would imply, there's huge religious undertones in that show, in which the um, basically the alien things that are destroying the Earth are presented with lots of religious imagery, and there's lots of commentary on, well, yeah, religion and kind of what it means to be human in a world of such larger than life, powerful forces. So I think there are like interesting things you could do with that idea. I just think King of Monsters utterly fails to do so. It's a very like westernized Anglo-Christian interpretation of religious commentary. Um, where it does just do the basic kind of Godzilla is Jesus thing,
mm,
which is weird and doesn't work very well. One of my least favorite shots in the film is Godzilla like dies in the middle of it, uh, and they show like a cross, and then they show Ghidorah
yeah,
screaming in the background, and it's like, you know, heavy-handed symbolism.
yeah. It's Man of Steel all over again.
Yep. It's just very poorly executed as far as religious commentary goes. It's not
Mm.
really commentary, it's just another kind of action movie that has weird Anglo-Christian undertones, which is, yeah, quite disrespectful to do to a Japanese property.
It's just thrown in there to make it seem weighty. Like it's not actually, yeah, like you said, it's not actual commentary. They're not actually saying anything. It just is like, what like piece of real world context can I throw into my film to give it a lofty feeling? I know, Christianity. Like it's such a cop out thing to do. Right, we're running out of time on our discussion for this movie. I just want to point out a couple little things before we finish up. And of course, Josh, you're welcome to do the same. So there's I talked about the scene where I feel so bad not remembering any characters' names, but honestly, who cares? Where the Japanese professor sacrifices himself, and generic white male protagonist says to one person, um, they suggest going down and detonating this nuke to revive Godzilla, and generic white male protagonist says no, that physically won't work. Don't do it because you'll die before you can even get there. And then the Japanese professor man says no, I'll go. And again he says no, that won't work, you'll die. And then he just says it must be done, and so he does it, and it's fine, and it works. And it genuinely made me laugh out loud. It was the most cliche, hilarious thing. Oh my god, it was so funny. To say something positive, there's one moment that I did really enjoy in this film. It was slightly undercut by terrible jokes during it, but it's when Godzilla. I think it's when he's first shown in the film, and they're in this sort of underwater base, and they open the blast doors, and it's purely illuminated by the flashing light on Godzilla's spine. So just every few seconds, there's a flash of light, and you see Godzilla. Genuinely, quite a creepy shot. Like he's, I also, this might just be because I have a huge phobia of the ocean. But yeah, it just kind of, it was just like, oh, that's striking, and I liked the way the light was used in that scene. I just Hollywood movies so usually treat like light as this plentiful resource, or not in the case of this film. But it was nice to see them actually considering how like light would look in this moment. So yeah, that was a couple little details I wanted to just say. Before Josh, is there any little details you want to point out before the film before we wrap up our discussion?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was an inventive, interesting visual scene when they're looking into Godzilla under the ocean and he's growing up. Uh, I wanted to talk about this film from an environmentalist theory angle. Um, I was having a chat with a person who's very into like the Green Party and is very into like environmentalism, and he was
Mm-hmm.
telling me about this book which essentially uh chronicle it's kind of like an anthropology of species in relation to the planet Earth, right?
Mm.
And a really weird thing that we've observed, it's a theory, so you can disagree, but is since the Earth was created, the temperature of like the sun and other space stuff has radically changed over the past millions of years, but the Earth itself is like climatized to different things. And when you think of the Earth in this way, the Earth itself becomes like a living organism, right? That kind of adjusts to its surroundings and reacts to things.
Mm.
And then climate change is basically change happening way too fast, and the Earth as an organism can't really deal with it quick enough. So it's just kind of getting older and dying, but dying prematurely
Like
because
a
of
terminal illness.
yeah. Uh, so and then to relate this to species, you could think of the way humans are maybe more evolved than certain other animals is that humans have become aware of the earth as an organism and aware of how we affect the earth through climate change. So in this way, there's a sort of recognizing of the earth as a fellow organism which we must be kind to, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Mother
Mm-hmm.
Nature and whatnot. And I thought this, I was like, this to me, this is like a really mind blowing theory. I'd never thought about it before, and I thought it was really interesting. So I had that conversation shortly before seeing this film, and I was watching the film, and I was like, oh my God, I kind of see that in this film, like maybe the monsters are like that visualization of the earth and us trying to just destroy it and treating it as this enemy, which you have to mine, materials from rather than nurturing it. It's a metaphor, and then by the end of the film, hopefully, we'll reconcile with the monsters, and it'll be a metaphor for reconciling and treating the Earth properly. But the film utterly fails to deliver on this. Its conclusion is that, oh, actually, the villain is an alien monster, so Earth is fine. We're gonna kill it. Alien things are bad, and it really just doesn't get to that more nuanced kind of recognizing another thing as life and treating it as such, which I was hoping it would do, which I think would be a great statement on climate change. But yeah, it failed at doing that. So anyway, that's my last thing to say about the film.
Oh man, Th- this film, this film drained me. I didn't watch films for a bit after seeing this. I was like, I need a break. Um, okay, so to get into our recommendations, I would not recommend this film. If you're a fan of Godzilla like me, you're probably gonna go see it because we don't get a lot of Godzilla movies anymore. So you whatever, fine. Um, but if you just want a well-made, like blockbuster that's good and fun, kind of Pacific Rim esque, it really fails just as that. Um, Not only is it not a compelling narrative, it's painful. The dialogue, I cannot emphasize how bad the dialogue is. Um, it's so awful. God, I just sound so exhausted. Yeah, and it's really not worth it. For the few moments of action that are fun, it's really not worth it. So I just can't recommend this film to anyone, really. You won't enjoy it, I think. Maybe you will. Everyone's different, but yeah. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a very strong not recommend. I really hate this movie. It's empty, it's shallow, and it's boring. It's how long is this goddamn film?
It's so long.
I
It's
think it's like
so long. It's like 2.5 hours.
yeah, it's like 2 hours and 10 minutes long at least.
Ugh.
Uh, and it's extremely dull. So yeah, I'm giving this a hard not recommend. I think I've kind of stated in my review why I feel that way, so I don't
Yeah.
really want to waste any more energy thinking about the film ever again.
Yeah.
Don't please. This is bad. Uh, no, no.
Forget about it. Forget it exists.
I'm giving it a hard no.
So next up is our discussion of Shin Godzilla. This is a reboot of Godzilla from Japan. It came out in 2017, I believe. Like Josh said, it's penned by the guy who did Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Say his name, you coward.
You didn't say his name, you coward.
Hideki Anno.
Oh, okay, cool.
We call him Anno, Daddy Anno.
Right.
Those are the other names we call him.
But yeah, there hadn't been a Japanese Godzilla movie for quite some time, and obviously the the East has a very different way of making Godzilla movies, which is they make good Godzilla movies. I don't think of the big three American Godzilla movies, any of them have been good at all. One of them being awful, 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 which is the Matthew Broderick one. But anyway, that's not what we're here for. We're here for what we think about Shin Godzilla. I'm going to start with Josh this time. I'm really, really curious to hear what he thinks, even though I think I have some idea. So, what do you think of Shin Godzilla, Josh?
I kind of wish you would have told me this was directed by Hideki Anno because, I thought I yeah had no ties to Godzilla, but actually, I'm a huge Evangelion fan, so
Hmm.
coming at this from that angle, it was like I was pretty interested to see how he would take the character. He's Evangelion is known for taking the mecha genre, which is the big robot fighting genre of anime,
Yeah.
and subverting it into a horrifying psychological nightmare. Uh,
For context, I haven't seen Evangelion in the slightest.
yeah, so I was expecting something similar here, you know, a kind of subversion of the monster genre and him going into what that means for us as humans psychologically. A pleasant surprise is I don't think this is just Evangelion with Godzilla. I think the themes he's dealing with here are quite distinct from Evangelion, and the style he's using in directing is very distinct from Evangelion. Um, and I thought overall, I thought the film was quite good. I quite enjoyed it a lot more than I thought would
Oh.
have. I could easily say this is the best Godzilla film I've seen. Um, and one thing that really impressed me is it was able to strike a balance between pretty much every element it attempts. It does pretty well. The humor is really good in this film. The It doesn't have a protagonist, but I somehow felt like more connected to so many characters in this film than anyone in the other Godzilla film. Like this is a protagonistless movie. It's very forward thinking in that the protagonist is Japan or the Japanese government.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, I feel really connected and bonded to like the key figures that we see throughout the events of this film. Um, but I was worried that all that would be good about it was the political intrigue and the comedy. Obviously, it's got a very like it almost like it kind of reminds me of British comedy, like the thick of it, kind of lampooning uh, procedural politics.
Bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy. Uh, but the horror in this is great. My favorite part of the film, where in my opinion it peaked, was the midnight Godzilla attack, as I'm going to call it, and that was a breathtaking scene and the best use of the character I think I've ever seen. Even I think this is quite a bit better than a lot of the kind of classic Godzilla action fight scenes with the men in rubber suits. Like I think this is some of the best Godzilla action that's been made. Um,
Can I?
so yeah, overall, I enjoyed it.
You have no idea how happy you just made me. Oh, my heart was warmed so much. Oh, um, yeah. This is my favorite Godzilla movie. I love it. I agree with everything you just said. And just loving this character so much, seeing all of these elements so perfectly executed on the screen. Um, Maybe not perfectly, but with so much care and affection. Um, was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was such a wonderful viewing experience. I pretty much enjoyed every minute of it. You just said everything. You just said everything. You made me so happy. Yeah, yeah. When you said that thing about Japan, I'm so happy that we agree. I mean, probably you're not so enthusiastic about it as me, but yeah, I I'm gonna talk about Godzilla for a bit. Yeah, I completely agree. The midnight attack scene was fucking breathtaking. One thing I'm just gonna talk about dumb elements for a bit. We'll talk about the intelligent parts later. uh, aka Never. His atomic breath in this film was awesome. It was awesome. I don't know how they combined stop motion animation, which was flawless, by the way, so amazingly with this CGI, but it looked fantastic. Um, I think CGI can be good. I think CGI is good, and it's come a long way. And I don't care when I see it in movies. It's a plot telling tool. But
Yeah,
God,
like we liked Endgame, which was
exactly,
just 90%
which
CGI.
is CGI, yeah. But the physical presence of stop motion animation in this film is it's so lovely. And it's a really nice way of showing love and affection for the original movies, but without being saccharine as the American Godzilla is. It's such a strong homage. There's so many camera angles that are just basically winks to older films, and it's brilliant. It's like, and it's not just cheap fan service because it doesn't actually take away from the story. It also looks amazing. While stop motion animation isn't the most naturalistic movement, its physical presence really it's something else entirely from CGI. While CGI can look very convincing, the physicality of stop motion animation I don't think will ever be replaced for me. So Godzilla looks fantastic in this film, I think. One hilarious thing while we were watching this, because this was our first Minority Arts Appreciation Society viewing party, and I'm glad it turned out so well. Um, but Josh was very confused when Godzilla first shows up in this movie because he kind of looks like a chicken and he can't walk on his hind legs, and it's pretty hilarious when he. I mean, it's also scary, but when he's just barreling through the streets, just kind of not able to walk. Um, but it's brilliant because it creates a slow reveal of this gargantuan monster, but not in the way Gareth Edwards did it in 2014, where you literally don't know what Godzilla looks like until the last 10 minutes of the movie. Um, it's it's the same character but evolving into this threat. And what I think the evolution of Godzilla does really well in this movie is it raises the stakes of what the military is doing when they don't kill Godzilla when he's in his weak form and they allow him to become stronger and elevate himself. It's their fault. Therefore, when he becomes stronger and kills yet more people, um, which yeah is great. Like it's so much of this film is satirizing bureaucracy, like Josh said, and that uh, element in which Godzilla is allowed to kill more people and be responsible for more deaths as a result of their shortcomings. That's great storytelling, and it's there's never a moment where a character says this is our fault. It's just laid out bare in the character's complete destitution at the events of the movie. Um, yeah, I'm gonna wrap my long opening up now, but I loved it. I loved it. Do you have anything else you want to say, Josh? I mean, there's plenty of time left.
um, there was some stuff where I felt like Anna's directorial choices would have gone better in an anime than in a live action film. I don't really like how the uh early developed stage of Godzilla looks. I feel like in an anime that would have looked really scary and cool, like with the crazy wild
Eyes.
eyes on the side and where it slithers along. It reminds me of shows such as like early Attack on Titan, like season one. I haven't seen the other seasons, but early Attack on Titan has very like grounded realistic art style. But there will be like really weird creature designs which are just horrifying because in the anime it's like it's believable. But here I it really took me out of the film. It felt noticeably like less good than everything else in the film. Like
Okay.
it did take I like the design. I just don't think it was executed well, or it just seemed weird in live action. I just couldn't take it seriously,
No,
basically.
I get it. Tonally, it's a bit interesting.
But when Godzilla actually shows up later on, that looked amazing. He looked really good. Um, another thing I wanted to say is you talked about how what the humans do actually impacts Godzilla in a way that makes us reflect on how we think of government and how government works.
Mm.
And I think that's really well demonstrated in comparing the climax of this movie to the climax of, or one of the inciting climatic moments of the movie to that of King of Monsters. When King of Monsters, you brought up how arbitrary the conflict of we can't bring the bomb underwater was, and it was just really dumb. But
Yeah.
here, the conflict of either we freeze Godzilla and prove to the world that Japan's worth something, or we let Japan get nuked again, which brings back all of the World War II anxieties that are obviously still in Japan. That was a really like moving conflict, and it was very human conflict. And it was like it made it matter. It wasn't just about killing a monster. It was like, what are we saying about Japan?
There's a fantastic line where they're talking about how the US controls Japan and has loads of weight over it. While this is quite a it's quite a blatant line. There's lots of little more subtle digs about how the US influences Japanese politics throughout the rest of the movie, but they say it feels like the war never ended, and then I think a character said to him, "Post-war extends forever," and it's just saying Japan will always live in the shadow of World War II, um, and just yeah, there's simultaneously so much like an acknowledgement of fault, but it's that acknowledgement of fault that's driving the characters and the politicians to be better. Um, and and you already felt that incredibly strongly in the movie. They're trying so hard to just do the right thing, uh, but it's only when that element of nuclear tensions is introduced, it's heartbreaking. Characters like give up. Characters are distraught and brought to anger and tears, and it's so powerful. I think I've like audibly like sighed when I realized that that was going to be the final conflict of the movie, and that's just infinitely like more interesting than Godzilla punches Ghidorah. Those B movies from the 70s are really fun, but what this film gets right about Godzilla is the horror. Um, he he not just because of his actions, but his presence brings conflict. Um, and you could almost see Godzilla as a metaphor for the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. It was out of control. It was brutal, and and now America believes they have to go to extreme measures to reduce it. I can't stress how genuinely executed that conflict is between the nuclear solution and the peaceful solution.
So Hideaki Anno, uh, with the way he writes the government in this movie, there's a great balance of cynicism and sympathy. So it never, so there's really funny, cynical moments of him criticizing Japanese government, such as the beginning of the film. I think to just like blatantly give my opinion away, I think like the first hour or hour and 15 minutes of the film is the best part of the film. Uh,
Mm.
and the beginning of the film when you have the giant lizard thing has emerged, and then you just have government officials running back and forth between different meetings rooms, and nothing's really getting done. No decisions are being made. That's really funny and on point. Kind of criticism of general government bureaucracy, but
Yeah.
the. I'm not Japanese, but I assume Anna is criticizing the Japanese government in that sense.
So much is happening, but so little is coming of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And but also there's that kind of sympathy, such as like you said, kind of Japan being under America's thumb after World War II in certain. I don't do history degree or politics, but yeah. There's a great shot of the Japanese, the Japanese American lady who's like a representative of Japan is talking to the president of America, I think. And
Yes. Yes. In the
you
plane.
like all you see is a shot of his hand kind of like tapping the armrest, and you don't see his face, and but she just looks very like petrified and small in that kind of moment, and it's a great kind of visual image of communicating to us the sympathy we have for Japan and the anxiety surrounding their relationship with America. So this is just a great little example of ways Anno uses kind of cinematography, humor, directing prowess, to portray both like sympathy for Japanese government as well as cynicism. It's very balanced, it's very well thought out, and I really like that aspect of the film.
Definitely. And it's kind of that's done in the structure of the film as well. In the first half, there's definite sympathetic elements to it, but it is very comedic. Everything they do is, I think, goes wrong in the movie. Every time they suggest something that's actually correct about what's happening, there's about 15 politicians ready to tell the person that suggested it that they're wrong. Whereas in the second half, when the government is essentially destroyed after Godzilla's main attack, and bureaucracy is in ruins, it's at this moment where Yaguchi, who is probably the most fleshed out character in the movie, sort of big steps into the protagonist role in the last half. They disregard bureaucracy and they come together as people, not as politicians. They come together as people who have the tools to save Japan, not logistically, but morally and personally. Um, while there is bureaucracy within the government, he's saying that when the bureaucracy is stripped aside, there are always people there genuinely trying to help who care. Um, and that Japan itself will always come first. And I think it's really powerful. Yes, so there's never a simplistic character who, puts them down and says what they're doing is completely futile. It's much more wholesome than that, and some might say that that's unrealistic or just idealistic even. It creates real sympathy for the plight of Japan in that the characters are so desperate to prevent this from happening, that it really grounds the situation for you and really puts into perspective how serious a problem this is. And to this is what I'm saying about uh, movies with dumb premises. You can do anything with a movie. Movies aren't their premises. Movies are their execution. I wholeheartedly believe that. I'm about to sound like a video essay here, but to how ridiculous is it that in this movie there's a monster that looks like a chicken bumbling through the city, and later on I'm brought genuinely near to tears by the conflict uh, of nuclear tensions in Japan. Um, it's a testament to Arno's direction. I keep leaving out the other director, but I don't have their name on me right now.
I'm sorry, did
Um,
the other director create Neon Genesis Evangelion? No, I didn't think so.
maybe they did something good.
R.I.P. that other director.
Yeah, honestly. We'll see what they do next. But yeah, as I was saying, you can do anything with your movie. You can do anything, and this is why I have such a love for Godzilla. He can be put in a variety of scenarios and in the hands of a variety of directors, and they can choose to interpret from him what they can. But I think ultimately, what's most powerful is that he's a Japanese creation, and relating him to Japanese conflict, uh, done properly, has always been the most interesting thing that's been done with him for me. Um, and that's coming from someone who loves dumb monster action movies. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is movies are more than just their conceit. You can look at the poster for Shin Godzilla, and see a dumb monster and move on from that if you're not into dumb monster movies. But take take Josh for example. He's watched this and found something much more to enjoy from it, as well as enjoying some of the cool monster moments in it. Um, yeah, that's all I really have to say. I just love this movie.
Awesome. And like just on a very base level, Anna's kind of subversive, self-aware touch really elevates the movie's quality. So like he's very aware of the tropes in big disaster monster movies, and he takes great efforts to avoid them. Before going to see Godzilla King of Monsters, I was complaining to someone that I was with. I was complaining to the person I was going to see it with that I'm pretty sure it's just going to be. I know there's going to be a scene where like the Godzilla does a thing, and then a scientist is like, "Guys, I figured this thing out. You've got to believe me." And then a government official will be like, "Ah, he's a crazy scientist."
Yeah.
And yeah, that happened, and that happened in 2012, and it's happened in Twister, and it's happened in uh, well, yeah, lots of disaster movies. I've run out of things to list, but yeah, no, I hate that. And this doesn't have one scene that happens in, and it's very refreshing and lovely, and yeah, just a very unique, genuine approach to making a disaster monster movie. One criticism I do have is after the Midnight Godzilla scene, I really do think the film lags quite a bit, and I really feel the length in the second half. I still think the concepts they deal with are quite interesting. Like I told you before, I really like the conflicts between the nuke and the ice bomb, but it took like it just felt like a good 30 minutes to kind of dragged on a little bit too much for me, and it wasn't really doing stuff that was that super interesting visually or acting wise. Uh, it was kind of sparse, if that makes sense. Like there were long stretches where I was just like, okay, let's get on with it a bit. Like this is dragging on for quite a while, which is surprising because it's only 2 hours long. But honestly, that's really like my own criticism of the film, really. If I'm honest with you. I,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah, I do see what you mean. Godzilla, I mean, after that scene, he becomes sort of dormant for a while. Literally in the movie, he's dormant. Um, but I do, because this is at the point where the nuclear conflict is introduced, and I really enjoyed seeing the way characters essentially related to that conflict and reacted to it, to each other. Seeing Yaguchi step up to the sort of protagonist play, I found really enjoyable as well. So I see what you mean. It definitely slows down, but it's not so much of a problem for me. But hey ho. So to get into our recommendations, I would wholeheartedly recommend this. Um, I think give it a try, no matter what kind of movie fan you are. If you like if you like Godzilla, you'll really enjoy it. If you don't like Godzilla and you think monster movies are dumb, you might well enjoy it. There's human conflict here with a ridiculous premise, and I think to execute that so well is really impressive. And I this is meant to be a reboot. I very much hope that there's a similar follow up that's treated so um, wholeheartedly, and it doesn't just evolve. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the movie. Josh, would you recommend this?
Uh, yeah, I'd give this a pretty. I don't know. I said as if to create tension. I'd give this a pretty good recommendation. Um, I think the some moments of it could be more visually interesting. Uh, but overall, it made up for it with amazing writing and, like I said before, hitting all the notes really well. Most elements of this film were just very entertaining and moving and was very well rounded. One thing to note is that Matty noticed that the dub isn't very good. And I'm all for a good dub, okay? Like
Dubs
I'm
are
all for a
fine.
good dub.
Yeah,
Like I was telling Matty,
Studio Ghibli has good dubs.
Mary Jane Watson as Kiki's delivery service. I mean, what a great casting choice. But seriously, watch if you're gonna watch this, watch it subbed because
Yeah,
yeah, the dub's not very good. But other than that, I think this is a great film that like yeah, pretty much everyone should check out. Like I can't really think of many who wouldn't
I
find anything to latch onto in this film. I think it's so well rounded that it would appeal to a lot of people.
yeah, I was gonna say that if you don't find that kind of bumbling humor, kind of like English humor we talked about, then I might not recommend it. But just because the first half is so heavy on that. But then I thought about the tension of the first half, and I was like, no, that's actually pretty good. Obviously, it's not. jaw clenching, but there's enough of it there that you could really get something out of it. This film just does work really well on a lot of levels. I love it. Can't say enough good things about it. And so let's move on before I just waffle even more and make editing hell for me. I believe now that we've wrapped up our Godzilla discussion, which I'm very pleased we did. I think, yeah. Oh wow, we just realizing how much our opinions aligned with each other. That's crazy. I did not expect that with this episode. Wow. Something I'm so impassioned about, and Godzilla something you're so disaffected about. That's awesome. We were coming up at this from completely different angles, but we
I think,
actually
yeah, I think the biggest compliment I can say about Shin Godzilla is it made me care about Godzilla.
yeah, no, guys, all four of you listening, that's huge. That's crazy. Anyway, I believe Josh has some albums to recommend.
Well, suggest for the next episode more.
Suggest. Apologies.
Um, well, okay, so for the next episode of the Minority Arts Appreciation Society podcast, we'll be going back to music discussion, and I will announce the albums we'll be discussing. So, the two new albums. First, the kind of headliner of this episode will be Eagle by Tyler the
Woo!
Creator. So a really popular album at the moment. Made it to number one, beat DJ Khaled. You know, that was a good moment.
Fuck you,
Uh,
DJ Khaled.
and yeah, I'm a big Tyler fan, and obviously this album's uh quite a detour from Flower Boy. Uh, and yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what we both think of this album in the next episode. The other new album I'd like to discuss is an album called Keepsake by Hatchie. Are you familiar with Hatchie at all?
No, just yeah.
Hatchie is an Australian dream pop artist, and this is I think, her debut studio album. Uh, she's on the same label that has King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards, who you like. So,
Mm-hmm.
that's a link for you. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to checking the album out and discussing it with you.
Yeah, your
Hopefully, it's
description just there got me a bit excited.
And then we've got our older album that we'll be reviewing is
Don't do another meme, please.
The Life of Pablo by Kanye West.
Oh, you picked the biggest meme you could have! What the fuck? Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
Matty may
Okay.
not remember, but at some point Matty casually suggested, "Oh, we should review Life of Pablo one day. That would be an interesting discussion." Uh, and I remembered that. So I've put it on the schedule. I'm really excited to talk about Life of Pablo. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the most divisive hip hop albums of the decade. It's like Marmite for rap,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to. It's a very weird and complicated long album, so I can't wait to give it lots of time, uh, and discuss it with you in depth. Uh, and Kanye is always a fascinating subject to discuss. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny almost everything he does is at least interesting. Um, so that's gonna be really fun. So those are the three albums: Tyler the Creator, Eagle, Hatchie Keepsake, and The Life of Pablo by Kanye West. So feel free to listen to these albums at home if you want to, go along with the discussion and know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we wholeheartedly recommend that you watch slash listen to the things we talk about. That's the way you get the most out of it. But I also understand if you just like listening to our voices. I'm gonna edit that out because that's so creepy. Um,
Coming soon, an ASMR Minority Arts Appreciation podcast.
dude, I can actually do ASMR with this mic, so hell
Wait,
yeah.
how does this sound?
That sounds so abjectly awful. But
Like
never.
ASMR?
Fuck you.
Would
You
you like to
just
wrap up the episode?
no. We are now going to have a 20-minute discussion on the merits of ASMR. And there's nothing you can do about it. But no, I think your picks are great. I think it's gonna end up being another 2 hours, which I don't care about. I'm super excited to talk about all of this. Oh, well done, man. It's gonna be a great episode. Okay. I think we've ticked all the boxes. Haven't said that for a while. Do you
Taboo.
think we have?
You know what? I think we've ticked all the boxes.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Well, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time for our music episode. And have a wonderful day wherever you are. Josh doesn't want to sign off again, apparently. No more sign-offs on this podcast.
Goodbye, everybody. Have fun listening to the life of Pablo for the next 3 or so weeks.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.